Andy Ruiz versus Siarhei Liakhovich on the 20th of December. It's a fight I've done a little bit of looking into today. Andy Ruiz is one of these heavyweight prospects who I'm yet to fully buy into. There's a few reasons why, but let me talk firstly about the positives of Ruiz. For those who don't know, Ruiz is a fairly sizable man, at least in one sense. I'll come to that in a little bit. He carries a lot of power. So far in his professional career, and he's 25 years old, so still relatively young, especially considering he campaigns at heavyweight. He's 23-0, with 17 of his 23 wins coming by way of knockout. Now, it's not just the ratio that makes me think he's a big puncher, but having watched a number of his fights, you can see that the guy punches, his punches are hurtful, they carry a bit of sting behind them. And if we look at his last performances, he hasn't gone beyond 4 rounds since 2012, and in that time he's had about 8 fights, several first round knockouts, several second, third round knockouts. He's someone who gets the job done early, he's someone who clearly hits hard. Now I think the other thing to like about Andy Ruiz is he is slightly more, he's got slightly more dimensions to his game than just being a massive puncher. He's also got very, very quick hands, deceptively quick hands. In fact, if you're in the ring with him, looking at him visually, you wouldn't expect him to punch like that. His jab is really fast, really snappy. He throws combination punches. He's got really, really good hand speed for a heavyweight, full stop, let alone a heavyweight who looks like Andy Ruiz. His combination punching is really decent. He doesn't forget to work the body. He throws a real nice shot to the body, as well as that quick jab. He throws a nice jab cross combination. There is quite a bit to like about him, and visually, he looks to hit hard and looks to hit very, very fast. There are a few reasons I haven't bought into the guy. The main one is his weight. He turned pro at 300 pounds as a very, very young man. Now aged 25, he typically weighs in around 250, 260. In English money, 17.5, 18 stone, that sort of level. Now that may be the going weight for a heavyweight these days, but Ruiz, firstly he's 6'2", so he's not a massive heavyweight in terms of his frame, but visually the guy is carrying so much excess fat, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in terms of his height, he's not the biggest guy in terms of the muscle he's carrying. For me, he's carrying 3, 4, maybe even 5 stone just of pure fat. He looks awful. I'm not somebody who thinks you need to be body beautiful to be a heavyweight. I'll say this quite a lot. I don't want to bang on here, but to be heavyweight champion, you don't necessarily need to be built like Vladimir Klitschko. You don't necessarily need to be built like Anthony Joshua. But you need to be athletic. Andy Ruiz still is fast with his hands, but his movement isn't there. To be honest, you can't be a good mover at that weight and carrying that much fat on you. Potentially this is a guy who could make cruiserweight, with his frame. He looks like a cruiserweight frame, but he's carrying 50 pounds just of pure fat. It's not good to see, especially for a young man. And you'd have to assume as he gets older, that sort of weight being on his body is only going to have a sort of increasing negativity on his performance, especially as he starts facing a higher level of opposition. I think one of the reasons Ruiz hasn't been found out as of yet is because his power has got him through and meant that he's knocked out everyone so early that there's not been anyone there who's been able to drag him deep. I understand he's gone 8 rounds before, but the level of opposition he went 8 rounds against was very, very low indeed. And you have to wonder if he's in with anyone even remotely decent over 8, over 10, over 12, when he gets to that level where his power isn't just blasting people out. You wonder, can he possibly have the stamina to last the distance? I mean, I'm not an expert, but I would guess that it's almost impossible to have that amount of fat on your body and to be coming on strong rounds 9, 10, 11 and 12. It just sort of defies belief that you could be that out of shape, carry that much lard on you, and have sort of stamina to go 12 when you're going to be facing elite level guys who are athletes, who are fit. You know, it's not that he has to have a six-pack, it's not that he has to have massive biceps, but he surely can't have that much blubber on him. So my thoughts on Andy Ruiz is he has got potential, he's got power, he's got hand speed, but there's a lot that needs to change really, and I think as he starts facing decent level opposition, he's going to get exposed, because when he doesn't knock someone out, I can't see this guy winning fights on points over 12, and every heavyweight gets to a point. It will happen to Anthony Joshua, it will happen maybe to even Deontay Wilder, where power on its own is not enough. You need to bring more than power to the table, and I fear that Ruiz will get found out. That's actually not the only issue I have with Andy Ruiz though. I think his defence is absolutely terrible. He's an offensive fighter. He puts his sort of emphasis on coming forward and, you know, getting people out of there, which is fair enough, it's pleasing for fans, etc. But if you want to see an example of defensive frailties, look at Tor Hamer. Look at the Tor Hamer fight. I mean, Tor Hamer he's not terrible, but he's a long way away from the elite level. He's very much a second tier fighter. And Tor Hamer is landing with ease on Andy Ruiz. Ruiz's movement isn't there, his footwork isn't there, his guard isn't there. I mean, even the basics of putting your hands up, it's not there. Tor Hamer is able to catch him with the jab, is able to constantly land his cross. I think there's one moment where Tor Hamer throws a right hand and catches Ruiz, and almost sort of disbelieving how easy it was, just throws the right hand straight away again and lands again. It's like Ruiz had no capability to defend against Tor Hamer, got into a massive brawl, and eventually forced Tor Hamer to quit, not for the first time in his career, I had. So there are big issues with Ruiz. The main one is his weight. Can he possibly be taking it seriously at that weight? Can he possibly be going 12 rounds at that weight? But also his defence. I mean, when he starts fighting people at even a semi-elite level, you know, a top 10 level, guys who can hit back, how is he going to stand up if he's that open? I mean, there are guys in the top 10 who aren't massive punchers, you know, Takam, Perez, Fury, Jennings, you know, these guys aren't Klitschko and Wilder style punchers. But when you get to that level, people hit very, very hard, even if you're not a Deontay Wilder style puncher. And if you're that open as Andy Ruiz is, it is not possible to go the distance if it's that easy to hit you. I mean, it was very, very worrying to watch. So I'm kind of at a crossroads with Andy Ruiz. I see similarities between him and Chris Arreola, both stylistically and in terms of discipline. And I get the impression that he's not really going to be able to excel and break into my heavyweight top 10 at any weight without making real substantial change to his game. Having said that, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and he's beaten everyone so far. If we look at his record, there isn't a depth of great talent who he's been in with. Tor Hamer, UK fans may remember, he won prize fighter, beat Kevin Johnson in the process. He beat Joe Hanks, who at the time was an undefeated heavyweight. If I remember correctly, was working with Don Charles and Derek Chisora. He was expected to be a little bit of a prospect. There's a few other names on the record. I know he beat Oliver McCall's son, etc, etc. But if we're honest, the best opponent he's been in with is, you know, Tor Hamer, maybe Joe Hanks. Maybe you could say that Joe Hanks is better than Tor Hamer. Neither of those guys, realistically, in my opinion, would really qualify as top 50 heavyweights. So Andy Ruiz has got a long way to go in terms of calibre of opposition to get in with, and he steps up with this fight with Siarhei Liakhovich. Now, Liakhovich at one stage held a version of the world title. I believe it was the WBO version against Lamont Brewster quite a few years ago. He comes to the ring with a record of 26 wins and 6 losses. He's also a taller guy than Andy Ruiz. He stands 6'4", so he's got a slight reach advantage and slight range advantage, which could provide an interesting dynamic potentially. Now, Liakhovich is a step up possibly for Andy Ruiz, possibly. I mean, I suppose he's not a dissimilar level to Siarhei and Joe Hanks, but potentially a step up. He's been in some bigger fights in the past. He's held a version of the world title, but to my eyes, he's shot. You know, his best days are behind him. He's become nothing more than an opponent these days, and he's very, very much past his best. Now, in terms of the names he's actually lost against, there was one loss in 2002, which we'll ignore. Other than that, it's Nikolai Valuev, Shannon Briggs, Helenius, Jennings and Wilder. They're respectable opponents to lose to. That doesn't mean you're terrible. But the more worrying thing is the decline. You know, back in 2006 when he lost to Shannon Briggs, I know he lost that fight. I'm just looking at pulling up the scores on Box right now. He lost the fight technically by KO, but I think a few of the judges, and I'm just checking here, yeah, a few of the judges, I believe, actually had, I think all of the judges actually had Liakhovich ahead going into the 12th round, and Briggs pulled out a stoppage. So he's not terrible back in 2006. You know, up until the 12th round, he's beating Shannon Briggs on points. He lost against Valuev. He then put in reasonably durable opponent performances against the likes of Helenius and Jennings. He went 9 rounds with both Helenius and Jennings. Now, Jennings possibly isn't the biggest puncher out there. Helenius maybe hits a little bit harder. The fact he went 9 rounds with those guys is respectable form. You know, Helenius, Jennings, they're at least a similar level, at least the same level as Andy Ruiz, if not better. The worrying form really is the Deontay Wilder loss, where he was knocked out horribly. It was one of the most horrific knockouts you'll see in the very first round of the fight, and having watched that, you'd have to have severe concerns about Liakhovich stepping in a ring again. He looked really, really badly knocked out. I remember him twitching on the floor, and it was quite unpleasant to watch. Since then, he's come back against a journeyman with a losing record, and he's won on points. Went 8 rounds, won a unanimous decision, relatively wide decision, although I do know the judges all scored the opponent at least 1 round, some of them scored him 2 rounds. So, yeah, my opinion is he's past his best. My opinion is he's very much happy to be used as an opponent and isn't coming here with too much desire. I am also concerned that last time he was in with the power puncher, he was horrifically knocked out, and Andy Ruiz would be classed as a power puncher. So there's certainly concerns over Liakhovich coming into this fight. Having said that, up till relatively recently, this is a guy who went 9 rounds with Jennings. I think that was only 3 fights ago for Liakhovich back in 2012. He went 9 rounds with Jennings, and the fight before that went 9 rounds with Helenius. So if he was able to put a performance like that on, you know, I'm not saying that he was doing well in those fights, but if he was at least durable against Andy Ruiz, that would potentially be interesting. Not because we expect Liakhovich to cause Ruiz problems in terms of what he brings to the table, but in the sense that I want to see how 250-pound Andy Ruiz copes coming in against an even average opponent when it gets to round 7 and 8 and he's got all that weight pulling him down. I just want to see how he copes. You know, is it possible for a guy, and this is over 10 rounds, so is it possible for a guy like Ruiz to, you know, with that much fat on him, to fight into round 9, to fight into round 10 and to keep the pace coming? For me, that's an interesting question. There's all, you know, Liakhovich isn't, as I say, I really think he's a very faded fighter. Having said that, if Ruiz went on to gas as badly as his physique said, you know, suggests it will, and Liakhovich is still in there in round 5, round 6, round 7, you know, perhaps he could amount some offence. And with Ruiz's hitability, if Ruiz remains that hittable, and if his stamina does fade as I expect it to, potentially there's a chance of Liakhovich causing an upset. I actually think Liakhovich of 3 or 4 years ago would be very, very live in this fight. I think he's got too many miles on the clock. I think there is a risk he'll get knocked out early. And I'd certainly predict Andy Ruiz to win the fight, probably by KO. But there is the potential here for Ruiz to get exposed. And by exposed, I don't necessarily mean him lose the fight. But there is the potential that, Liakhovich could once again highlight how hittable he is, could jag him deep, and could really make Ruiz, expose how out of shape Ruiz is going late into the fight. I think if Ruiz is to be anything better than the next Chris Arreola, he needs to make drastic changes, both technically to his defence and lifestyle-wise. I'll be watching this fight with interest. As I say, I'm yet to be convinced by Ruiz. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him, but I probably won't be convinced by him even if he beats Liakhovich, because if we're being charitable, it's unclear what Liakhovich has left. But an interesting fight, at least moving in the right direction. Hopefully it happens this time. I understand it was cancelled previously. And you never know. Wouldn't be a surprise if Ruiz turned up in a big fight in 2015 should he be successful. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.